Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Motion by Mr. Anderson, second by Mr. Keeling. All those in favor by a show of hands. So moved. Item 3A, citizens' participation.
Mr. President, we had no request for participation per Board Policy BDDH.
Item 4A, written communications.
Mr. President, you did receive one written communication from the district Friday, May the 3rd, in regard to Boy Scouts.
Thank you. Item 5A, military liaison update.
Hello, Mr. President. Just wanted to put out that, we had the airfield open house this past week, and really thanks a lot for the whole Waynesville School District for supporting that. In all honesty, the event couldn't have not been what it was, not having those children out there. A lot of great displays, a lot of activities and so forth. Next week, or actually this week, Wednesday, we'll welcome Dr. Henry and Dr. Hawk at our PI meeting. Another good partnership going on there. And just as we move into the summer months, might want to mention that Recplex with your swimming pool and your go-karts and miniature golf and everything, that's open to the public and the families that are out there. Right now we're doing movies and bands in the park, again, all open to the public. So I'd like to welcome everybody out to those events. So, thank you.
Thank you. Item 5B, district announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight we will recognize the Waynesville Middle School staff. Welcome, middle school staff. That's that Legion back there. Very good. We appreciate everything you do at the middle school, and you'll be recognized, or one of your colleagues will be recognized tonight by CTA, but we just want to say thank you. We know you work very hard, and we appreciate all that you do. Honors Night will be held at 7 p.m. tomorrow night in the WHS Auditorium. We anticipate approximately $6 million will be given in scholarship funds to the class of 2016, and we truly appreciate the support of the community on that. Graduation will be held 7:30 Friday, May the 20th at Tiger Stadium, weather permitting. To sit in the bleachers on the home side, guests will need a ticket from a senior. The event will be broadcasted live on the internet, Facebook, and over Channel 12 and Channel 18-9. The last day of school for all students, grades kindergarten through 11th, will be Thursday, May 26th. It will be a half day of school, so please be careful on the streets. All the young ones will be out and about again. Summer school will be held June 6th through July 1st. Free breakfast and lunch will be provided during summer school at all of our schools except for Thayer Elementary. However, Thayer will still serve breakfast and lunch to those who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Summer sports camps are listed on the athletics website under important info and forms. Also want to thank everyone for participating in the Patron Insight Survey. We'll be posting results later this month, and you'll be able to access those through our webpage. The results of our cybersecurity audit were announced last Tuesday by the Missouri State Auditor Nicole Galloway, and I'm very happy to say that nearly all of the recommendations have already been implemented. We had a lot of the practices in place, but did not have them documented in policy format, and we've been working to get those in place now. The last item we will address is when our faculty returns, we'll do a training with all of our staff on data security. Also want to mention there has not been a data breach in our district. We are one of the first 5 schools in the state of Missouri that have received this audit, and every school, if the plan stays the way it is now, will receive this audit by the time that they're done. So all in all, we appreciate the work of our technology department and getting this material together, and we'll continue to improve upon that. For Twitter fans, we have a new Twitter account for the school district. It's Way Tiger PR. So for you Twitter folk, you'll know it's I'm probably hashtag Marianne Way Tiger. No, just plain Way Tiger PR. Okay. We've also reinstated the Waynesville R-VI School District Facebook page. And finally, I want to thank Tim Wallace and his crew for all the work they do. We have quite a production stage here to put on this broadcast. We really appreciate all you do to help us out with that. So thank you.
Dr. Henry, I also want to say that today is Tim Wallace's birthday.
Oh,
Happy birthday, Mr. Wallace, and thanks for all you do for us.
Yeah, Tim turned 21 again. All right, congratulations.
Item 6A, bid recommendations. Dr. Berger.
Yeah, very simple and straightforward bid recommendations. I don't think I'll be glad to answer any questions. But
Any questions? Okay. Item 6B, financials.
Financial report for May 10th, 2016 in MOSIP, $35,479,173.87. CDs with the Bank of Crocker, $10.5 million. The general account holds $5,292,575.60. Payroll account, $9,339.52. Our insurance account with Bank of Crocker, $536,758,041, and total funds, May 10th, 2016, $51,817,847.40.
Any questions? Okay, items C through E are minutes, study minutes, regular minutes, and closed session minutes from the April meeting. We'll take those as presented. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Mr. Keeling. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Schultz. All those in favor by a show of hands. So moved. Item 7A, Skills USA medalist, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, we're going to recognize students from Waynesville Career Center who participated at the Skills USA State Championships, which were held March 31st through April 2nd. The Skills USA competitions allow our career and technical education students to showcase their skills in various occupational areas. Our Career Center had nearly 70 students participate at the state level. This includes Waynesville High School students, area students who attend WCC, as well as our adult students. Tonight, we're recognizing our students from Waynesville High School who participated at the competition and who earned medals. And Dr. Pattison is going to come read their names for us.
Kalani Ferguson placed first in graphics imaging sublimation. She also placed first in graphic communications technical information. Reagan Garby placed first in broadcast news production. Dominic Joseph placed second in pen design. Noah King placed first in interactive application and game development. Catherine Christek placed first in broadcast news production and second in television production technical information. Alexander McCachran placed first in broadcast news production. Brandon Maletti placed second in commercial baking technical information. Vincent Rivar Barb placed first in broadcast news production. Autumn Sitton placed first in commercial baking. Tristan Smith placed first in computer programming. And Fantasia White placed first in restaurant service.
Congratulations to all of our state competitors.
Item 7B, JROTC Army National Drill Championships, Dr. Atkins.
Tonight, we would also like to recognize our JROTC Arm Drill Team, who finished 11th in the nation at the 2016 Army Drill Nationals on April 9th. This is only our second time to participate, and we've moved up from last year where we placed 17th. In addition to placing 11th overall, Our armed exhibition team placed 7th. Our armed exhibition solo placed 5th. Our armed duel team placed 9th. Our armed regulation team tied for 12th place. And our armed color guard team moved to 12th place. Colonel Williams is going to come present or call their names so they can receive their certificates. Call them one at a time, and we'll do photos, and we'll do a group photo afterwards.
Jacob Askins. Stephen Barrios. Richard Case. Donovan Dunaway. Eric Grease. Molly Handley. Timothy Hutchings. Matthew Jones. Oliver Pagel. Ben Pullman. Peyton Canones. Colin Ronjay. Carly Wheeler. And Ashley Wolf.
Thank you, and again, congratulations to our Army JROTC drill team.
Item 8A, Spotlight on Education, Mr. Beachcamp.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Waynesville Middle School is delighted to nominate Coach Tennille Stevenson for the CTA Spotlight on Education this month. Come on up. This is Coach Stevenson's 8th year in education and his 3rd year in the Waynesville district. He teaches fitness and conditioning. When asked what his inspiration is, he stated, "The people who have doubted me are my inspiration. All of the negative things people say I cannot do. I just use it as motivation to prove them wrong." Coach Stevenson has enjoyed coaching varsity football and basketball for 10 years and building lifelong relationships with his student athletes, parents, and members of the communities he has been a part of. To him, this is what athletics is about. Coach Stevenson would like to thank administration, colleagues, and most importantly, the students. Without his students, his job would not be as enjoyable. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9A, fourth quarter project teach award, Mr. Vaughn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Project Teach is sponsored by Seller Sexton's Auto Group. Seller Sexton's Auto Group will donate a $100 stipend to Tammy Nelson to support expenses related to the project's materials and supplies. Ms. Davison worked with all the 7th grade students. Project is Save Aloft Engineering Design Process Challenge using thermal insulation. Mr. Freeman is here tonight to award Ms. Davison the fourth quarter Project Teach Award.
Well, Mr. Vaughn, first of all, on behalf of Seller Sexton, we want to say thank you for your support over the years and your what you have given to this district, and we compliment you and say well-deserved retirement coming forward, and enjoy those horses, enjoy life. So we Seller Sexton want to say thank to you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to recognize an outstanding teacher once again, and I'm just amazed each time I read these nominations and the winners year by year and month by month and quarter by quarter to see exactly what's happening in our district. So tonight I want you to listen very closely and get an idea of what your 7th graders are doing in our school district. Now, Miss Davison had a program which was about engineering design process challenge using thermal insulation for our 7th graders. Now, I remember in 7th grade, my math was called our science was called general science or earth science. There was definitely no engineering occurring in our science class other than who could build the best paper airplanes to see how far they could fly across our classroom. So our science has improved drastically. And so we compliment you for coming up with programs such as this. As a wrap-up to the heat transfer target, their students will be presented with an engineering design process challenge. She introduced the challenge with the viewing of the music video of In Summer from the movie Frozen. Now, for those who have grandchildren or children, Frozen has a cast member by the name of Olaf, which is a snowman, Olaf, who wants to go to summer. However, we all know what really would happen if he did. Being a snowman, he would melt. He needs some form of insulation to keep him from being a puddle of water. Students will be given the choice of 3 different objects: cardboard, cotton balls, styrofoam plates, aluminum foil, white computer paper, black construction paper, a piece of white T-shirt, a piece of black T-shirt, or bubble wrap. They will then construct a shelter for Olaf to stay in while the summer sun is beating down on him. 7th graders, by the way, again. After they have built their shelter, we will mass Olaf, which was a piece of ice. At the same time, each team will place Olaf into their shelter and turn on their light, which is their heat source. After 10 minutes, they will then remass Olaf. The students will then calculate the percentage of weight loss Olaf had. Winning team is the one with the less loss. Students will then analyze the difference with the type of material used and the percentage loss that each group had. The comparisons will be as a class. Now, I have to ask because I have to know, what material did Olaf do the best in his melting process?
Aluminum foil.
Aluminum foil.
Shiny side out.
Ah. 7th graders, I'll say one more time. Now, this is why our students today are excelling. Programs such as this and teachers who will go above and beyond of coming up with projects and ways to show students how not just to read it out of a textbook, but to really apply it. So tonight, Seller Sexton is honored to recognize another outstanding teacher. Your 4th quarter teacher this year from the Waynesville Middle School, Miss Tammy Davidson. I have a plaque in her honor as well as a $100 check to hope that she can buy lots of aluminum foil for more programs such as this. Miss Tammy Davidson. up there.
I really appreciate the honor of this. I really enjoy doing those projects with my students and attaching it to the real world. Past summer, I went to a training on Project Lead the Way, and I taught the other teachers about how you could use the In Summer song and use that with heat transfer as well. And so I've been passing on my knowledge to them as well. So I look forward to doing more here.
Very good. Item 10A, Seller Sexton Auto Group for support of the Project Teach Award, Mr. Vaughn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I would like to recognize Seller Sexton for 15 years now. They've been supporting our teachers with Project Teach. They come up with this idea, and they've done a lot of support over the years, not just with Project Teach, but other things, I know, with athletics and different things. So they really support our community, support our school district. They've over $6,000 worth of Project Teach help with their project. So anyway, again, just like to recognize Mr. Freeman and Seller Sexton for their support of our district. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
We'll display it proudly. Thank you.
Item 11A, Career Embedded Handbook, first reading, Dr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just sitting here reading about Olaf and the aluminum foil out, thinking that could be a new wrestling weight cut things right now, or something like that. So less mass, right? Less mass. Tonight I have for you here the Career Embedded Handbook. This is the first read for you, but just to kind of explain where we're at in that process, we've been very fortunate to have a very involved group of community business leaders who are very interested in this project. When we initially timelined it out, we were thinking we would launch with it a year from now. However, we have a couple of organizations that are really excited to have a pilot group of students come in. So because of that, we wanted to make sure you had a look at the handbook, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have with that.
Any questions or concerns? Very good.
Get after it. I just make one comment. This is I think this is going to be a great addition.
Yeah.
And I think it shows that community support is out there, and that this will give our students a step up for whatever they do. That they'll have some work experience in fields that they're interested in.
Right.
So
We appreciate
excited.
that. Yeah, it's an exciting project. Our kids will get a great opportunity to do some things, and obviously with scholarships and getting into career and technical schools and things, practical experience gets more and more important. Involvement gets more and more important. So it'll be a pilot. I'm sure we'll learn as we go, but we'll start small and see if we can really grow it into something great. So.
Yeah, like Mike, I'm very excited about moving into this arena. I think it'll be a great opportunity for our students. Item 11B, Transportation Employees Handbook, Dr. Berger and Mr. Wilking.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Attached is the fiscal year 17 Transportation Employee Handbook, and the changes marked in red. And myself or Mr. Wilkins would be glad to answer any questions you have tonight or forthcoming.
Any questions or concerns? Appreciate all the work that goes into putting a handbook together. I know it was needed to be revised, and looks like you've done a great job. Good job, Carl. Any questions or concerns? Item 11C, FY17 Staffing Plan, first reading. Mr. Vaughn?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. The FY17 staffing plan is presented to the board as a first reading. We did have a discussion during study session. Central Administration is continuing to assess the staffing needs for the 2016-17 school year. So at this time, it's a first reading. We'll bring back approval at the June board meeting.
Any questions for Mr. Vaughn? Okay. Item 11D, 2015-16 Professional Development Report, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we come to the end of the year, it's time to reflect on our professional learning plan for our adults in the district. We have two main goals. One is to ensure that district staff will be trained on best practices in their respective work, and then also to recruit, attract, and retain highly qualified staff. Through the Instructional Services Department, we do this by ensuring that we offer professional development that is relevant to teacher needs. This year we did something a little bit different. In January we had a PD day where we offered more of a workshop model, and staff were able to make some choices in the professional development that they pursued. Also, staff has the opportunity to pursue professional development outside of the district through things that are offered around the state and even nationally. As we have made some changes, we have seen since 2013-14 when staff reported satisfaction with professional development was at 66%, and we're now at the 85% level. Additionally, we do have a teacher induction program for our new staff, which helps to introduce them to the field of teaching and then also acclimate them to Waynesville. Many districts send their folks out to state-level programs for this. Our program actually exceeds DESE's expectations, so we do offer that here, and we provide support and training during the first 2 years of teaching for our staff. Are there any questions?
Just a comment, the teachers really liked the January way they got to choose. It wasn't just the same, a lot of positive feedback.
And we have that planned for next year. We have for October and January to offer that model again.
Okay. Item 11E, support our students program report. Mr. Vaughn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just kind of some history on this. We began this program in 2010 with when Career Ladder went away, and so as a district we wanted to still continue working with our teachers and giving them compensation for working with students. And so basically they receive participants who follow this plan, the SOS, they receive $750 for 25 approved hours or $1,500 for 50 approved hours. And I will tell you, it's not in the document that you received, but in 10, 11, and 12, 13, the board allotted $500,000 basically for this program, and again, it's been approved for this coming school year. So 10, 11, 12, 13, we were right around $250,000, so about half of that. But as you can see in the document that you have, 2013-14, we were at $326,000 with 208 teachers doing the 50 hours. 2014-15, around the same, 198 doing the whole 1,500 hours. But this year we've had a lot more participation, and that's exciting. We had 288 participants for the full 50 hours, and that was $436,500. Again, so to date, 12,700 hours of student contact time have been logged this year. So I think that's remarkable, and that shows the pride of our teachers and staff and wanting to help our students. So again, I just want to give you an update with that, and excited going into next year. Currently, we have the process May 20th. Teachers who will want to be involved next year will get that information and know how many are going to participate next year.
Questions? Very good. Item 11F, proposed job description, first reading. Mr. Vaughn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. The following attached proposed job description is presented for your review as a first reading. This is our teacher leader program, so we developed a job description for that. The administration will request approval at the regular June meeting of the Board of Education.
Questions? Item 11G, 2016 MSBA Policy and Procedure Update, first reading. Dr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did have our TABS meeting. You obviously have several policies and procedures in for review. However, there are a few key things to note. Board organizational meeting, electing an MSBA delegate. If not, the following policy talks about in the future, then that automatically those duties go to the president. Also, there's some additional things added in there, so I might highlight that. We had quite a bit of discussion over hazardous materials and integrated pest management, focusing a little bit more on not having a routine pest management plan, but only focus on using pest management when it's necessary, because we've done everything in the environment we can to prevent pests from getting there in the first place. So we had those discussions. Also, just an area of note that in teaching about human sexuality, much more in there now about teaching internet safety, knowing stalkers on the internet, how to combat those type of things. So all of those questions that came up in tabs as far as hazardous materials and things have been referred to Dr. Berger through his department to make sure we have trainings up to date, and we'll keep working on that because there was quite a bit this time around.
Very good. Questions? Item 12, action items. 12A, student handbook, second reading. Dr. Henry.
Thank you. The student handbooks for the upcoming school year are all online. I did not receive any questions from anyone on the board regarding those. The changes that were made to JG R2 and 3 are reflected in there, and we did not make any changes to JG R1.
Do I have a motion to accept the student handbook? Motion by Mr. Keeling. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. O'Reilly. All those in favor by a show of hands? So moved. Item 12B, Professional Learning Plan and Mentor Protege Handbook. Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have for you tonight our professional development handbook, and that does align to the expectations set out through DESE, as well as our mentor and protege handbooks for our new teacher program. And we are recommending a motion to approve them as presented.
Any questions or concerns? Do I have a motion to approve the PDCH handbook?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Keeling. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Anderson. All those in favor by a show of hands? So moved. Item 12C, FY17 salary recommendations. Dr. Berger.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to get just a few slides here. Covered a little expanded version of this in study session, but did want to hit some highlights, focus on some things. We always start, and this is all pertaining to next year's budget, and this is really plugs in when we're talking about salary recommendations is the biggest part. It's going to be 70% typically of our entire $75 million budget. So when we start that, we're 60 days out from formulating or approving, the board approving a budget. But we are dealing with some concerns and dealing with some unknowns. And from a revenue side, local, state, and federal, assessed value. So pretty much the big driver there is assessed value times our tax rate. We know we run the lowest tax rate allowed by the state at 275. We also know that assessed values have not been growing very much, and I don't believe our county's officially reassessed since 2007. So there's incremental growth there. The enrollment trends do have a play in local revenues too, because of a redistributed statewide sales tax that actually comes to us and is received as a local revenue. A little misleading because it's a statewide sales tax, but there's $1,000 per ADA or $1,000 per nose, you might say, and that kind of plays into the enrollment trends. Senate Bill 509 was some legislative action that took place in 2014 that will start our next fiscal year. There'll be a 5-year phase-in over those tax cuts, and they are expected to have some challenges at the state for competing resources, health, prisons, public ed, higher education, all be competing for fewer dollars due to those Senate Bill 509 actions. Again, enrollment trends. So we talked, again, a little expanded version of this in study session, but our enrollment trends, our next slide will demonstrate the drop in enrollment we're experiencing, but from a state perspective, at least $5,000 per nose or per ADA for every lost student. Oh, excuse me, jumping ahead. Federally, again, enrollment trends, because our basic support and our impact aid, B2, heavily impacted, is, again, per nose, so to speak, but per ADA. and talk a little bit about that on the next slide too. But then this thing has been kind of cast a shadow on us, but our B2 heavily impacted status. And I'll actually have a slide kind of educating the assembly today and any of those watching that'll expand on that a little bit and some changes with Every Student Succeeds Act, that some that benefit us, some that don't benefit us, but we'll dive into those just a little bit. But the B2 heavily impacted status, and ironically, we were approved today. So if I look a little lighter, it's because we have been really worried about that. It's getting later and later in the fiscal year, and without B2 funds pouring in, the budget gets pretty ugly whenever we start wrapping it up for the fiscal year in June. So I was elated at 6:13 this morning when we got the voucher from Impact Aid from Washington, saying that we were again eligible, or were again qualified. This is really the slide that whenever we talk about all those places where enrollment trends hit, which is $1,000 at the local level, $5,000 at the state level, at the federal level, $8,000. It can be, not for every student, but it can equal $14,000 per student. And we'll start locally. Locally is prior year ADA, so prior year students in attendance, sorta, but I'll simplify it to that. And so if we're looking at 17, I'm going to have to use 2016. So my 2016 numbers, though we were kind of expecting might even be lower than this, but we were pleasantly surprised that they actually, for the most part, stayed above 2015. From a state perspective, where I lose $5,000 a student for every, or $5,000 per student, the state has a mechanism where they let you use current year or 2 years prior, and it's just for the purpose of what we're experiencing for declined enrollment, so you can adjust budgets, because typically you need a little time to transition the expenditure side. You are going to receive potentially less revenue if you have fewer students, so you've got to adjust staffing is the main place that you can make your adjustments and have an impact on the budget. So for example, current year for 16, I can use this year, this brown line, I believe it's orange-brown, or this blue line. So obviously I want more students to multiply against, so we're using this. Unfortunately, next year, wherever our line trends out for fiscal year 17, I'm going to be in this group at best. I'm jumping out of this group. We really like this group, right? Now, that affects ADA at the Prop C level for local level. It affects state revenues at $5,000. But what we somewhat overlook, and pretty specific to our district, just a couple districts in the state, is it impacts our impact aid. Our impact aid for B2 is actually looking 3 years back. So they're looking here at this purple. So for fiscal year 16, now that we're B2 eligible, I can say that just today, they're actually looking, we're getting this revenue. And it won't let us choose, the best three or the best one of any 3 years. Whenever we jump into the following year, it'll just go in sequence from year to year. So we'll start, our B2 revenues will slightly decrease. And of course, that's all dependent on appropriations at the federal level, as it is appropriations that will at the state level for state formula or the Prop C funds. So I know I probably have made that a little bit muddy, but the name of the game is, if you've got students, you're going to get paid per those students. And if you're growing students, it becomes easy, because typically you've got more revenue the following year, no matter what. When you're declining in enrollment, things get pretty challenging. Again, now this whole agenda item pertains to salary. So salary history, what has been kind of the expectation, or taking a look backwards, everywhere from 0.5%. We were fortunate last year and we were able to jump at 2%. And so what does 1% cost us on for next year? To just make a additional step, and we in the education industry understand what that means, but we can take a vertical step is typically what we're talking about. You can actually take a horizontal step too for increasing your education. But if our certified, non-certified, everybody takes the vertical step, it's $624,000. And then we're going to, additional cost to move everybody to 1% is an additional $400,000. And then, as you would guess, 2%, if this costs us $400,000, of course we go to $800,000 and so forth. The 624 stays basically the same for each step for each projection, because the step costs $624,000. So $1 million, 1.4, and 1.8. Additional revenue, and again, we're looking at some wonderful things. For local revenue, we don't even know till August. That's when the tax rates passed. We will get information on the assessed value, but we won't get our first draft of assessed value till July. So after the fiscal year is started, we'll start getting information from the local level. County revenues stay pretty stable. We did bump those up $50,000 because we had about a 3-year trend of that increase. State revenues, and I wouldn't say this is aggressive, but it's certainly not conservative. It's right in the middle of the road. We're anticipating about $617,000 of increased revenue. So if you look at that picture, based on where we're at right now, taking that snapshot, that $1 million increase fits in here at the 1%. So thus the salary recommendation is 1% increase to the base, fully support SOS, and last April we did the Plan 8 for the health, which was as it was the previous year, likewise with dental and life. So administration's recommending 1% increase to the base, fully support SOS. Field any questions the board might have.
Have any questions or concerns? Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Keeling. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Anderson. All those in favor by a show of hands? All those opposed by a show of hands? Okay. 6-1. Item 12D, budget amendment. Dr. Berger.
Yeah, I can, have a briefer, a more brief PowerPoint than what is typical for our January revision or what we'll experience next year whenever we approve the FY17 budget. But there are a few slides here and I think some opportunities to educate ourselves further on what fiscal year 16 is looking like. I'll try to stay very much to fiscal year 16, but there'll be some things that certainly pertain to 17 as well. I put this big fancy black line in here because I wanted to make a distinction of something. There are typically in Waynesville, we operate out of 3 major funds. These are considered subsidiary accounts. So we have the teachers, the incidental, and the capital outlay. One of the primary purposes for asking for a May budget revision was that it actually pertains to our eligibility of impact aid. And I'll get into that in just a few slides. But remember, this is capital outlay and some things that we know about capital outlay. They're big items. They're typically what we consider one-time purchase items. They're not recurring expenses. CFOs, superintendents of school districts have a lot better time dealing with these than you do anything that comes out of here because whatever you do here keeps coming at you year after year after year after year. So it can be somewhat of a mixed message in whatever district across the state that you might be committing quite a bit of resource to a facility, but that's a one-time shot. And if you've prepared yourself, you can afford to do that. Where you have to be pretty cautious, many districts get themselves in trouble by committing recurring expenses. So there's, these, while they're important, they're subsidiary accounts, they even are on the general ledger, really there's 4 accounts that are considered primary. The one that's missing here is debt service if we had a bond issue. We are very fortunate in our community. We do not have a bond. We don't have money out in debt through a bond with a tax levy committed to pay off that note. So we actually have 3. That's a little more simple, but that's an important distinction. And we could even slide those subsidiary accounts off. They're not on the SBR. You have to kind of get down in the weeds of the SBR or the general ledger or even the audit. Really, it all starts with those first 3. I'll circle back to that in a little bit. Basic impact aid, so a little 101 on that, and I know some of this is review. I've got to point to it when we get there, but for when we're basic support, we're going to get about $5,600 per ADA on the prior year. So that's where we were up until this morning for fiscal year 16. Now, as of this morning, my new voucher comes out, and it says impact aid number 4. So I'd gotten maybe, I think it's actually 2 and 3, but I'd gotten 2 basic support payments, and I was getting $5,600 per ADA. When the new one hit, I get an additional $3,000. So my multiplier becomes $8,000 instead of $5,000. So you can see that makes a huge difference when you're talking about students on post. In order to qualify for that B2, this is some changes, and this is relevant because this is an ESSA, and this is moving into fiscal year 17, and I thought this was a good time to kind of introduce that, and you'll hear either myself or Dr. Henry talk about that in the future. But this is the one we're familiar with. The district must make a reasonable tax effort, which is defined as 95% of the average of the comparison group. That's getting more difficult to do because every time an election cycle circles around, we know neighboring school districts and school districts across the state increase their local effort. That makes it hard for us to be 95% of the average at the state minimum of 275. That didn't change, unfortunately. For Waynesville, it didn't change. This did change. Student enrollment. If you remember, this standard used to be 40% if they were uniformed, 50% if you counted the uniformed connected kids plus DOD civilian kids. So that changed. They just made it at 45%. That did not impact us at all because the board is well versed on what percentage about that ballpark we're at, 70. So that wasn't, didn't have any impact on us. This one did have an impact on us. And the standard before was have a lesser per pupil expenditure, or PPE, as state or national average. Well, that way we could almost ignore that one because it was national average, and relative to in the across the nation, Missouri doesn't commit a lot of resources to education, meaning that how that kind of funnels out is the per pupil expenditure for Missouri is typically very safe compared to national average, well below it. But now it's 125% of the state, and you see this trend, 9,800, we were about 9,300, 10,1, 9,800, 10,4, and now we're at 10,2. So per pupil expenditure is just what you think. What are you spending per pupil? Now, but you do take out capital outlay. So it's considered the operation, Fund 1 and Fund 2, the teacher's fund and incidental fund. So we've got to monitor this now because we're approaching state average, and anything we can do now might help us in future years in terms of keeping that per pupil expenditure. We want to stay well comfortably below that ceiling. We've been doing work with DLT on how we can code things. We've done a lot of internal work, and a lot of that internal work out of my office comes out in this May budget amendment, is detailed out in your function reports that you get every month, and certainly we have our 100-page general ledger that we work off of in the office, and you're welcome to come in and visit about that anytime. Any questions on that? I probably should take a pause on that. There's some changes. It goes into effect next year. Well, I thought it would be on the May. You might see that again, even in some of that in the June when we approve FY17 budget. Fiscal year 16. So with the changes, what we're talking about, revenue stayed just about the same at that. We always kind of rounded at $75 million budget. You can see how it's broke out. Of course, this impact aid, there are many schools in the state that get impact aid, but not to the level we get. This DOD supplement is specific to B2 schools. There's only 2 in the state that get that. There's less than 30, or there's typically about 30 in the nation that get that. And of course, we are heavily impacted as of this morning. Federal revenue, kind of the trend. We'll see that you'll see some years where impact aid jumps up, and you remember the 0.55 factor. Another quick little tidbit is we were only 1% away, according to today's voucher, this fiscal year's voucher, from that 35% threshold of off-post uniformed kids. That would have bumped up our revenues again. Didn't happen. We were 1% off. So we are close to that, and we monitor that. We never budget for it, obviously, because it would bump our federal revenues $3 to $5 million. We don't get that in 1 year, but we get it over typically a span of about 5 years. State revenues. One place that I still think we're pretty conservative. I think we're going to do better than this by the time the fiscal year wraps, but you can see the trend. Local revenues. This also includes the reason why. Excuse me, I'm one ahead, but let me think here. Let me go to my cheat sheet. Yeah, this is it. Okay, local revenues. The trend here has bumped up quite a bit. There are 2 things in here that we budgeted in this fiscal year that won't make it to fiscal year 17 that bump this up. And one is the financial institutions tax. That we're considering that a one-time revenue. It may come in next year, but we're not banking on it by any stretch, and we've been advised strongly not to. The other is E-rate. You remember the work that we did that almost was at $1 million that was spent out, but also revenues back in. So we're just looking at the revenue side. So this is inflated a little bit for current year. It'll drop back down potentially for next year as we work through the budget. Other revenue, this looks a little big too, and there's a reason. It's our there's $350,000 that's added to that for flood recovery from insurance. So it's a little inflated too. So that number for moving into fiscal year 17 will be back down to its normal trend line. Employee and salary benefits, and this is, where we might see that if our enrollment continued to decline, we would likely see this flatten out as it essentially has here anyway. We might even see it decline. So for the first time in many, many years, we might be bringing staffings, administration team might be bringing staffings to you that are actually reductions. So we'll see. Now, we continue to increase programs, and programs take people. So that's something that we're going to have to watch too. Every time that we add an instructional program, what's the cost of it? Does it add FTEs? Total operating expenditure. This is the number. It's not the exact number, but that's close to the number that they'll calculate for the per pupil expenditure. So that's total operating expenditure. That's incidental and Fund 2, Teachers Fund. Non-certifieds are paid out of Fund 1, incidental. So the trick there is get as much money out of here that we can, on the up and up, into Fund 4, so it will bring our per pupil expenditure down. Capital expenditure, that's our trend. Maybe this big number here is 6th grade center. And this is then 14, we did a payoff of some debt with the 05 and 11 lease. I think those were attached to Freedom and probably some other debt that we had pulled along. So we would expect potentially for fiscal year 17, and that's not, I know we're not focused there, we're focused here on the revision, but 17 might have some one-time expenditures in there that would bump that number way up to maybe look more like this number or this number. But right now it adjusts to that 7.5. And of course, we've got that 1.5 working, and that trends out on our amortization schedule for our lease purchase debt. We'll be bringing some information to you regarding that in a near board meeting. Might have some opportunities there. Total expenditure, 73.8 after revisions. And then again, back to this revised budget summary. If we looked over here and we saw total estimated receipts, 74.1, total estimated expenditures, 73.8, and that's, I think, going to be in the ballpark. That's the best we can do. The fun thing about being in Waynesville is we never know what the feds are thinking. They could send us back payments from prior years, so our prior year line item can look really good. They can not count us as B2 eligibility. I should probably have at least one or two more B2 payments this current fiscal year before June 30th. And my budget looks a lot better now that we're eligible, and we got a voucher for $5 million this today. But really need to pull in about $3 million more to feel even better about things. So I'll be kind of working the phones to see if what other schools across the nation have what number voucher they're on, and whether Department of Ed plans on sending us some more money in our fiscal year. Fiscal year 17 developmental budget goals. Same as they have been committed to for some time. Those are the things that we find important, and those are the things reflected in this budget revision. Answer any questions the board might have pertaining to the May 2016 budget revisions.
Any questions or concerns?
Thank you very much.
Do I have a motion to accept the report as presented? Motion by Mr. Keeling, second by Ms. Swant. All those in favor by a show of hands. So moved. Item 12E, proposed job description, second reading. Mr. Vaughn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. The following attached job descriptions are presented for second reading. That's Elementary Assistant Choir Director, Elementary Choir Director, and PBL Coach. The administration requests approval of the above job descriptions as presented.
Any questions or concerns? Do I have a motion? Motion by Ms. Swant, second by Mr. Anderson. All those in show by hands. Item 12F, Pick Elementary Alternative Center Facility Improvement. Dr. Berger.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've certainly spent some time on this agenda item. We've looked at a variety of facilities and even took a field trip. The board took a field trip one time prior to a board meeting to go observe one. So for recommending the action, note that these funds that we're recommending go right into a building that we currently have that is being master planned to go back in action depending on what we look like in the future. So we're pretty excited about that. And also, I would mention that the 153, I think, certainly in the ballpark for the mechanical, and electrical, and plumbing. The 160, we're going to beat that. So you'll see that reflected, I think, in fiscal year 17 budget. But we're using a little bit of contingency money to do what we need to do. And Kevin and the guys have done a great job out there trying to do as much as we can in-house. So that said, motion to house the district alternative school in Pick Elementary at an estimated cost of $313,000. That being $153 in mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and $160 in architectural construction.
Any questions or concerns? Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Anderson, second by Mr. Keeling. All those in favor by a show of hands? So moved. Item 12G, proposed textbook adoption. I'm sorry, Mike.
Could I ask Dr. Berger something?
Absolutely.
Since we've approved this, are we confident we'll have this work done? So alternative school will start out there in whatever the first day
That's
of
right.
school.
Yeah, in August, our every intention, unless we get blindsided. I think we're deep enough into it now as I look at Mr. Pritchard for an assured nod, but I think we're deep enough in it now to know that we're not going to get, there's nothing out there to blindside. We've done our due diligence and brought in FSG to help us evaluate. So I think we're in good shape. We're on time.
Okay. Item 12G, proposed textbook adoption. Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have several textbook adoptions for the high school level. Currently at the high school level in social studies, we teach geography at 9th grade. We are looking for going forward to teach world history at 9th grade. The new Missouri Learning Standards embed geography in world history, U.S. history, and government. So we're looking to align to that. We did look at textbooks. We are recommending the world history, the Modern World History Patterns of Interaction through Holt McDougall. Currently, it's a 2012 edition, but next year, the 2018 edition will be available. So for about a $4,000 difference, we will get the 2012 textbooks and materials now, and then next summer, they will actually send us all new textbooks, which will be their 2018 edition. So it seemed to make sense that we spend that little bit extra to get those. And then we also have public speaking, debate, and theater. They were in need of updating their materials, so we do have a recommendation for those as well.
Questions? Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Anderson, second by Mr. Quinn. All those in favor by a show of hands? So moved. Item 12H, proposed course description book changes for Waynesville High School and Waynesville Career Center. Dr. Atkins.
Thank you. We have some additional course description additions for next school year. At the high school, we do have the description for the career embedded course that was referenced earlier by Dr. Henry with the career embedded handbook. And at the Career Center, this year we offered 1 and 2 hour classes that were introductions to masonry and auto collision to help get students interested in career and technical education courses. Those have proved very popular. So for next year, they would also like to offer 1 and 2 hour courses in HVAC. So we are recommending a motion to approve the course description book changes as presented.
Any questions or concerns? Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Keeling. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Anderson. All those in favor by a show of hands? So moved. We have already completed our closed session, so I will move to item 14, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Keeling. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Quinn. That was fast. All those in favor by a show of hands? So moved.